What's up, everybody? Alan here from Dicewrench. Welcome to Foliage Render 2, an indirect rendering solution for Unity's terrain, and soon anything else. But this will get you started. It's compatible with 21, 22, and Unity 6. Many of you have been using Foliage Renderer for quite some time. FR2 is not a departure from that. It is just a technical upgrade with some new features and some stuff that you may like. So this video is a little walkthrough on how to get started from scratch. If you're already using Foliage Render, I have a separate video on how to update from 1 to 2. But if you're new to Foliage Renderer, just like in Jason's past walkthrough video, this will give you a quick primer on how to get your scenes up and running with Foliage Renderer and get those sweet performance improvements you are chasing. All right. So, just as before, we've installed Nature Manufacture's Wonderful Meadow package, and we've installed Foliage Renderer. Those are the only two things in this project. It is otherwise brand new. I'm in the built-in render pipeline because it's quick and easy, but full render pipeline support and render graph support is included in the package. So the first thing you're going to want to do here is I've popped open the Unity standard demo scene. I've just renamed it so that you can, I don't know, I guess I can get back in case this video goes sideways and I need to do another take, but I don't think that will happen. So the first thing we will want to do is go up here to the Create menu, and we will choose Create Foliage Renderer. This will add all the necessary components, hook up our cameras, attach our terrain to the system, and get us ready to rock and roll. So we'll click that button. And a bunch of stuff will get added. We will see that there's some warnings here. FR only supports a maximum of 4 LODs. So these are to be expected, and you'll want to calibrate your data accordingly so that you're not loading stuff you're not using. But that's some easy prefab cleanup work we can do down the road. You can see here we have an indirect draw manager. This class is responsible for taking all of the trees and details in your scene that you are rendering, collating them together, and it gives you the ability to override the rendering parameters for each of these things. Very cool. We will look at that more in depth in a moment. We also have a new indirect renderer. This is responsible for actually rendering the scene. It takes all of the draws provided by the draw manager and submits them to the GPU. And we have some settings here that we can calibrate, and we can see which of our cameras are registered to render. Currently, our scene view here is registered. You can see nothing's showing up. Don't panic. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm just walking you through the components that are involved, and then we'll look at how to fix this. Next up on our terrain, we have a terrain foliage provider, and we have a tree and a detail provider. So if you're coming from FR1, these two components are a little new to you, but they behave much the way terrain foliage provider used to. They're just sort of bespoke because maybe your game doesn't need both types of these things. Now you can sort of just have the thing you care about. Cool. Now, where'd all the stuff in the scene go? Great question. Foliage Render works on some especially packed transform data. And your shader needs to correctly unwind that. And so Nature Manufacturer shaders out of the box are not compatible, but we've included a handy shader patcher that you could get to by going to your draw manager and clicking shader patcher. You can also go up here to Window, Foliage Render, and get to the shader patcher that way. The first thing we'll need to do in here is scan, and this will show us all of the shaders that are currently in use in our scene, and we can patch them individually. Now, I will warn you at this point in time, there's an infinite number of ways you can make and write shaders. We cannot possibly patch them all. Included in the package are nodes for use in a shader graph. So you can use those, and there's documentation on our website and on the Discord of how to do so. And all the code you need is included. So you can manually upgrade shaders, and there's extra documentation if you run into some weird special case scenario. But in many instances, it will work like this. You're going to click these patch buttons. You click this patch button, do it all at once, but it's more dramatic this way, and we're making a video. So we'll upgrade our grass specular. Bam. And we'll do tree leaves. And we'll do tree bark. And we'll add our cross model shader, which will handle billboards. And then once that is done patching, we'll hit refresh to make sure everything's in here. And we are now totally in business. And you may be thinking, I feel like I could see more before. Yeah, there's a couple reasons for that. So, in addition to patching your existing shaders, you could also use the Foliage Render Deluxe shader or the Vegetation Engine ships with FR compatibility. You'll just need to set your shader manager there to FR mode, in which case you're probably done and you don't need to do the shader patcher. In either of those situations, you don't want to patch. You just want to use compatible shaders and carry on. And you probably won't even notice, but for TVE, you will need to set that drop down accordingly. Now we'll use our indirect draw manager to increase our draw distance, drawing more stuff because we can do it faster this way now that we're using the indirect rendering. To do this, we'll change our distance mode to manual. And my PC wants to run a little slow because we're recording a video, but you'll be fine. And we'll crank this up to 8,000 units. And you're like, that's astronomical. Yep, but that's the point. That's why we're all here. Now you'll notice nothing showed up. What's going on with that? Well, this is a little bit of a trick. So if we go into, we can click on any of our details here. Then we have some override options. We could change the object we're rendering, very handy. We can enable and disable the rendering of certain objects for debugging, and we could individually change the draw distance and shadow distance of anything involved. But we can also look, I don't know if I can click this because it's disabled, but I can click that. So we'll do it this way. Let's look at our prefab here. Nature Manufacturer has this handy scaling based on distance, which looks nice. FRDS has similar features. But this cull far distance means, right, from range 35 out an additional 15 units, these things are going to fade out. So what we need to do is we need to crank this all the way up. Once we crank that all the way up, suddenly all of our objects spring into view. So if you're having trouble with any particular assets, make sure your shader's not trying to do something for you that's limiting your draw distance. Similarly, LOD groups can also cause you trouble, but the indirect draw manager will warn you in those cases. If you have an LOD group present and it thinks the parameters aren't correct, it will try to help you correct that. Cool. Now we can collapse detail drawing and we'll expand tree drawing and we'll do a similar thing where we'll set this to manual and we'll crank up the draw distance so that we can see all of our lovely trees off into the distance. Max draw distance is now 2000. Ta-da. Now we can see everything. Now, fine-tuning your performance, you'll want to take a look at this max buffer caches number. You may want this to be higher. You may want this to be lower. You may or may not want to use distance checking. You may or may not want to use high Z occlusion. This will add a component to your camera that will cull out spaces so the grass behind these trees here where they're fully opaque won't be rendered. This is generally a speed up. You can also cull shadows based on frustum or not. All of these settings are going to depend on your game and your camera and what you need to do, and the right numbers are going to take some testing. There is documentation included that tells you about benchmarking, what to expect, what not to expect, what sort of scenarios are good test cases, what sort of scenarios are bad test cases. It is possible to install Foliage Renderer and see worse performance because you are offloading work to the GPU in a manner that does not benefit you. So make sure this is a good test case. And then you're going to have to tune your project accordingly now that you can render more stuff to really see the performance gains. But that will get you started. As you can see, it took us less than 10 minutes to do this whole thing, along with me prattling endlessly. So there you go. Foliage Render. You put a lot of stuff on screen. That's pretty cool. It's also modular and extensible, and we'll be adding more modules to the ecosystem as we go. If you want to see further performance improvements, I really recommend you switch over to FRDS. There's lots of documentation on the YouTube about how to optimize your assets even further using that shader solution and its many configuration options and the free material manager tooling that Dicewrench has available for you, whether connected to Foliage Render or not. It's free. Enjoy it. It's cool. I use it on lots of projects. It's great. There you go. If you have any questions or concerns, hop on the Discord. Let us know. Enjoy rendering more stuff faster, and we'll see you all in future updates. Thanks.